Preston barely had time to turn the key in the lock. As soon as the door opened and he stepped into the foyer, he was violently pulled into the darkness. Before he could react, a rough hand covered his mouth with brutal force, dragging him into the coat check as if he were a rag doll. "Shh! If you make a sound, you die." The whisper in his ear trembled with panic. Preston tried to fight, the smell of bleach invading his nostrils, but the woman pressed him against the wall with wild desperation. In the cramped gloom, he recognized the wide eyes of Hazel, the cleaner. She did not look like a criminal. She looked like someone who was seeing the devil. "They are going to kill you, Mr. Vance. Now!" She cried, tears wetting the hand covering his mouth. "Just look. Please, just look." She pushed the closet door with her foot, opening a minimal crack that led to the living room, where the crystal chandelier illuminated the scene that would destroy his life. Preston stopped fighting. His heart, already beating erratically, skipped a beat. He looked, and what he saw made his blood, already poisoned, freeze in his veins. His wife, Kendall. The woman he slept with every night, the woman who held his hand when he said he'd been feeling inexplicable dizziness for the past few weeks. The woman who swore to love him in sickness and in health, in richness and in poverty. She was standing near the marble fireplace. She did not seem worried about his delay. She was not calling his cell phone, distressed. She was laughing. A free, light, crystalline laugh. She twirled a champagne flute in her hand, the light reflecting off the golden liquid. She was wearing that red silk dress he had bought in Milan, the dress she said she only wore on very special occasions. Beside her, serving himself from the same expensive bottle, was Mitchell, his brother, his blood. The man Preston carried on his back his entire life. The man whose gambling debts Preston paid 3 times in the last year alone to prevent loan sharks from breaking his legs. Mitchell, who always cried, saying Preston was like a father to him. "Are you sure today's dose was enough, Kendall?" Mitchell's voice came through clear, without distortion, traveling down the hallway and entering Preston's ears like molten metal. He seemed impatient, checking his wristwatch, a watch Preston had given him as a gift. "He's taking a long time to go down. The doctor said it would be quick, an hour at most after ingestion." Preston felt the floor disappear. The cramped closet suddenly felt like a vertical coffin. Kendall took a long sip of champagne before responding, running her hand through her perfectly brushed hair with that vanity Preston had always found charming, but which now seemed demonic. "Easy there, eager little brother-in-law. Today I didn't take any chances. I doubled the drops in his green juice this morning." She laughed again, and the memory hit Preston like a punch. This morning, Kendall bringing the juice to his bed, kissing his forehead. He had complained about the bitter, metallic taste. She had said, "It's a new magnesium supplement the nutritionist prescribed, my love. Drink it all. It's to keep your heart strong." Preston felt like throwing up. He had drunk it all. He had thanked her. He had kissed the hand that poisoned him. He drank it all like an obedient little dog. Kendall continued, her voice dripping with contempt. "The taste was horrible," he made a face, "but he trusts his perfect wife so much that he didn't even question it. By Friday, his heart will stop. A massive heart attack. No one will suspect a thing. His history of stress, the dizziness we made up that he had, it's the perfect cover." Preston felt his legs completely give out. The entire weight of his living dead body collapsed against Hazel. The cleaner had to brace her back against the coat check wall and lock her knees to support his 200 pounds without making a sound. It was not just the physical dizziness. It was his soul being torn, sliced into small pieces, the chest pains, the cold sweats in the middle of the night, the mental confusion that made him forget passwords and names. He thought he was going crazy. He thought he was having a mental breakdown. Kendall, so affectionate, scheduling appointments with her doctor friends, who never found anything and prescribed tranquilizers. Tranquilizers that she administered. She was killing him. Slowly, cruelly. and his brother was watching the clock, waiting for the time to call the funeral home. Through the crack, the scene continued, each word a nail hammered into Preston's coffin. Mitchell took a small, unlabeled amber glass vial with a yellowish liquid from his jacket pocket. He held it up to the chandelier light, admiring the murder weapon. "What if he doesn't die, Kendall?" Mitchell asked with a pragmatic tone, like someone discussing a high-risk investment. "What if that bull's body holds up? What if he's just permanently incapacitated? If he survives and can talk, we're screwed. The new will hasn't been signed yet. If he wakes up and calls the police..." Kendall walked over to him. She touched her brother-in-law's shoulder, her hand sliding down his chest, adjusting his lapel, with a physical intimacy that made Preston's stomach churn in spasms of nausea. They weren't just accomplices. The touch revealed something more, something dirty. "If he survives, my dear, even better." She smiled, and Preston saw her teeth gleam. A predator's smile, knowing its prey has no escape. "I've already spoken with Dr. Abernathy. With the symptoms he's presenting, tremors, paranoia, hallucinations, aggression that we'll say he had, we'll have him committed on Monday, court-ordered incapacitation for permanent mental disability." She spun around, her red skirt swirling. "Imagine, Mitchell, Preston in a private asylum, drooling in a corner, tied to a bed, with no one believing a word he says. And us two here, with guardianship, full power of attorney over the construction company, and unrestricted access to the accounts in the Cayman Islands. No need to wait for probate, no inheritance taxes. It's the perfect plan. Better than death. It's death in life." "You are the devil, Kendall," Mitchell said, but there was no fear in his voice. There was admiration. He raised his glass. "To our new management, and to the end of King Preston's reign." In the dark closet, Preston's breathing became erratic, a painful wheeze. Air would not enter his lungs. The emotional shock was accelerating the toxin's effect, making his heart pump the poison faster to his brain. He began to tremble, an uncontrollable, violent tremor that made his teeth chatter. His rage was so intense it overcame his survival instinct. He did not want to flee. He wanted to get out of there. He wanted to jump at his brother's throat. He wanted to strangle Kendall until that smile disappeared. He tried to take a step forward, pushing the closet door with his shoulder. "I will kill them," Preston tried to articulate, his voice coming out in a guttural growl too loud for the tense silence. Hazel's eyes widened, panic taking over her face. "No," she whispered, trying to hold him back, but it was too late. Preston's foot, heavy and uncoordinated, hit hard against the metal tube of the vacuum cleaner that was stored in the corner of the closet. Clang! The metallic sound echoed through the foyer, amplified by the marble, sounding like a gunshot in the silent house. In the living room, time stopped. Mitchell froze with the glass halfway to his mouth, his eyes narrowed, focusing in the direction of the foyer. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice turning hard, alert. The cowardly brother's tone was gone. There stood the criminal. Kendall looked at the dark hallway. Her smile vanished instantly, replaced by a mask of calculating coldness. It came from the foyer. The maid, that Hazel, playing dumb. "Has she left already?" "I think so. I didn't see anyone in the kitchen when I arrived." "Go check," Kendall ordered, whispering now, dropping the glass forcefully onto the coffee table. "If someone heard, if that trailer trash heard anything, Mitchell..." "We'll take care of it today. Get the gun from the safe," Mitchell said, walking towards the hallway. Preston felt real, icy panic take over every cell. He had no strength to fight. If Mitchell opened that door, he would be killed right there, suffocated with a pillow, or forced to drink the rest of the bottle down his throat. It would be classified as suicide by depression or a heart attack. No one would investigate thoroughly. Money would buy silence. End of story. Hazel did not hesitate. She knew that holding a man of that size and dragging him without making a sound was impossible. The vacuum cleaner had given away their position. She needed a distraction, something to draw attention away from that closet. She looked to the back of the closet, desperate. There was a precarious stack of old Christmas decoration boxes piled to the ceiling. With a quick, almost acrobatic movement for the cramped space, she kicked the base of the stack with her heel, but held the top boxes with her free hand to create a delayed domino effect. "When I say go, sir, you run for the kitchen door. Drag yourself, crawl, but go." She whispered in his ear, her voice firm, hard, leaving no room for discussion. "Can you walk?" Preston nodded, sweating coldly, the world spinning in a carousel of nausea. "Go." Hazel released the boxes and pushed the entire stack against the side wall of the cabinet, which bordered the garage pantry. The crash was enormous. Heavy boxes of glass ornaments rolled, hitting the wall, making it sound as if something had collapsed in the pantry next door, far from the foyer. The sound echoed, deceiving the acoustics of the large house. "It was in the garage," Mitchell yelled, stopping in the middle of the hallway and spinning around. "It must be that stray cat again knocking over the shelves. I'll kill that animal." Kendall followed him, cursing, her heels clattering on the floor. "Let's see what it was! Quickly!" They ran to the right, toward the garage door. "Now!" Hazel pulled Preston to the left. They emerged from the coat check like two desperate ghosts. Preston stumbled on the Persian rug, his legs feeling like cotton candy, dissolving. He would have fallen flat on his face if Hazel hadn't slipped under his arm, serving as a human crutch. "Hang in there, Mr. Vance. Hang in there," she groaned, his weight almost breaking her spine. They did not go to the front door. Hazel knew the security cameras monitored the main entrance and sent the feed directly to Mitchell's phone. She guided him through the service corridor, a narrow labyrinth the bosses rarely used. They passed the laundry room full of his dirty clothes Kendall would probably order to be burned. They exited through the side door that led to the backyard garden, where the trash was placed. The cold night air hit Preston's face, but it did not relieve the heat burning inside him like typhoid fever. "My car," he stammered, trying to turn his body toward the main garage, where his armored Mercedes was, his steel refuge. "No!" Hazel whispered sharply, violently pulling him in the opposite direction, toward the small back pedestrian gate, which was unlocked because she had left it open to leave earlier. "Your car has a satellite tracker. Your car key is in the living room with them. Don't you understand? They control everything. You're coming with me." They crossed the dark street behind the mansion, stepping on the grass to avoid making noise. Preston looked back one last time. The living room window shone, beautiful, imposing, golden, the house he built with years of work, brick by brick. The home he thought he had. All a lie, all a luxurious stage set for his public execution. Hazel's beat-up '05 Corolla was parked 2 blocks away, in the shade of a tree, so it would not uglify the front of the Vance estate. It was an old car, a 2005 model with sun-faded paint on the roof and an ugly dent on the passenger door. She unlocked the door with the manual key and practically shoved Preston inside. He fell onto the torn seat, his head hitting the foamless headrest. The smell inside was of dust, gasoline, and old upholstery. But for Preston, at that moment, it was the only safe place in the world. The smell of poverty was the smell of life. Hazel ran around, got in, and turned the key. The engine sputtered, coughed. "Come on, baby, I start," she prayed, hitting the steering wheel. The engine roared to life with an asthmatic rumble. She pulled away, the bald tires squealing on the smooth asphalt of the upscale neighborhood. "Let's go." "To the police," Preston mumbled, his head thrown back, his eyes rolling, seeing lights that weren't there. He fumbled in his jacket pocket with a trembling hand, his fingers numb. "Sheriff. Mercer. He's my childhood friend. Plays poker with me." Hazel saw the screen of his state-of-the-art iPhone glow in his hand. Without a second thought, with the instinct of someone who had fled predators before, she snatched the device from his hand. "Hey!" he protested weakly, like a child. "Sheriff Mercer has dinner at your house every month, Mr. Vance. Wake up!" Hazel yelled, her voice full of protective anger as she took a sharp turn, almost driving onto the sidewalk. "Who do you think covered up the case when your brother hit that delivery driver last year? It was Mercer. The sheriff is in Mitchell's pocket. He's on the construction company's payroll. If we go to the police station, you'll die in a cell before dawn, hanged with your own sheet." The truth hit Preston harder than the poison. He was alone. The system he helped finance was now turning against him. Hazel braked sharply on a dark corner where there was a construction dumpster full of wood and concrete debris. She lowered the power window, which groaned as it went down. "The GPS! They will see where you are by your watch, by your cell phone. Take off the watch, now!" Preston looked at the solid gold Rolex on his wrist. A gift from Kendall. "To count the happy hours we will have together," she had engraved on the back. He felt disgust. With difficulty, he opened the clasp. Hazel took the cell phone and the watch. She looked for a second at that fortune in her hand, money that would feed her family for 10 years. And she threw everything forcefully into the dumpster amidst the concrete and scrap metal. The sound of breaking glass was the sound of Preston's final break with his old life. She accelerated again. "They will track the signal to the dumpster. They will think you were robbed and killed there. That will buy us time." She spoke quickly, more to herself than to him, trying to organize the chaos. They entered the main avenue, blending into the night traffic. The streetlights flashed across Preston's face like strobe lights. He felt a sharp pang in his stomach, as if he had swallowed shards of glass. The poison was digesting his insides. He doubled over, groaning loudly. "Hold on, boss. Hold on. Don't fall asleep," Hazel said, her voice trembling now that the adrenaline was subsiding a little. She checked the rearview mirror every 2 seconds, expecting to see the red and blue lights of the police or Mitchell's black armored car emerging from the fog. "Where are you taking me?" Preston asked, his voice fading to a whisper. "Hospital." The hospital asks for identification. The hospital notifies the police in case of poisoning. The police inform the family. The family arrives and finishes the job. Hazel responded, cutting through streets Preston had never seen, neighborhoods where the streetlights were dim and flickering. "I am taking you to the only place where rich people and police don't enter without an invitation." Preston began to convulse. His body stiffened, his head hitting the side window with a dull thud. Foam began to bubble from the corner of his mouth. No, don't die here in my car," Hazel screamed, desperate, holding the steering wheel with one hand and trying to hold his head with the other to keep him from swallowing his tongue. "Stay with me, Preston. Look at me. Don't let that bitch win. Do you hear me? Stay alive to see her in jail. Stay alive to get your revenge." The word revenge seemed to reach a deep, primitive place in his brainstem. His body relaxed slightly, stopped struggling violently, but his breathing became shallow, wheezing, like punctured bellows. The landscape changed drastically. The leafy trees and tall walls with electric fences of the luxury gated communities were left behind. The smooth, painted asphalt gave way to potholed streets, full of unmarked speed bumps and open sewers running in the gutters. They entered the projects. The sensory shock was immediate. The sound was loud, chaotic. Funk music blasting from distorted bar speakers, motorcycles whizzing by and revving their engines, dogs barking on every corner, people talking loudly on the sidewalks, the smell of roadkill BBQ mixed with burning trash. Preston opened his eyes for a moment, amidst his delirium. Through the dirty window, he saw a world he only knew from sensationalist newspaper headlines. A world he had always viewed with fear and contempt from inside the air-conditioned comfort of his armored car. Unplastered brick shacks, tangled stolen wires on poles, hot-wired connections for electricity, children running barefoot near black ditches, hell or purgatory. "We're here," Hazel said, stopping the car in a narrow, steep alley where the car barely fit without scraping its side mirrors against the house walls. She turned off the engine. The silence inside the car was heavy, contrasting with the noise outside. Preston was motionless, pale as wax, sweat drenching his $1,000 linen shirt, making it transparent. Some neighbors were at the entrance of a corner dive bar. They looked at Hazel's beat-up '05 Corolla. They looked at the unconscious, rich white man in the passenger seat. Murmurs began. Hazel knew that gossip spread faster than the internet there, but she also knew that the code of silence prevailed against outsiders. She got out of the car and ran to his side. She opened the door. Preston's body almost fell out. "Come on, it's close. Help me. You have to help me help you." She put his arm around her neck again. He was dead weight. Preston had passed out cold. Hazel looked around. A young man in a cap watched from a distance. She stared at him with a mind-your-own-business look. The young man looked away. She took a deep breath, inhaled sharply, and used all the strength she had in her legs, back, and soul. She pulled Preston out. He fell to his knees on the packed dirt, staining his tailored pants with mud and oil. "Get up, man," she grunted, pulling him by the waist, her feet slipping in the mud. With superhuman effort, she managed to drag him. It was only 10 yards to the dented zinc gate of her house, but it felt like 10 miles of ordeal. Every step was a victory. Every breath he took was a miracle. She opened the padlock with a trembling hand, dropping the keys in the mud once, cursing softly. Finally, she pushed him into the tiny yard and closed the gate, locking the world outside. The house was extremely humble. Living room and kitchen together in one room, a red polished concrete floor, which she waxed every Friday, walls painted a blue peeling from humidity. But it was clean, impeccably clean. It smelled of coconut soap, rue, and dignity. She dragged Preston to the old, broken, springed couch, covered with a colorful crochet blanket her grandmother had made. He collapsed there, his feet too large, sticking out, his dirty leather shoes staining the crochet. Hazel locked the wooden door. She slid the chain, the bolt, and even propped an iron chair against the doorknob, as if that would hold off the police or Mitchell's hired killers. Her heart pounded so hard her ribs ached, seeming to want to tear through her chest. She ran to the concrete sink, filled an orange plastic basin with cold tap water, and grabbed a clean dish towel. She returned to the couch and knelt on the hard floor beside him. Preston was burning with fever. He shivered, his teeth chattering. He began to murmur nonsense, the poison accessing the drawers of his memory. "Why? Kendall, I gave you everything. The lake house, the jewels. Why? My brother. I paid the debt. Don't kill me." Hazel wrung out the cloth and placed it on his forehead, wiping away the cold sweat and the soot from his escape. She looked at that powerful man, the construction tycoon, who always seemed untouchable at the top of his glass tower, now reduced to a dirty, delirious, and dying rag on a cleaner's couch in the projects. "The rich life is over, sir," she whispered, with a mix of pity and determination, beginning to unbutton his tight shirt so he could breathe better. She carefully took off his shoes, placing them in a corner. "Now there's no black card, no driver, no armed security. Now it's just you, me, and the will to live." Preston opened his eyes a slit. The blue of his eyes was cloudy, grey. He looked at Hazel but did not see her. "Mom?" he whispered, a solitary tear running down his dirty face, cutting through the grime like a river. Hazel felt a lump in her throat. She held his icy hand. "Sleep. I am here. No one is coming in here," she promised. Preston groaned and blacked out, plunging into the darkness of a poison-induced coma. He was alive. For now. Outside, a motorcycle roared past, its exhaust popping, masking the sound of Hazel's suppressed sobs, who finally allowed herself to collapse onto the cold floor. The night would be long, and the war had only just begun. Time no longer existed. There was only pain. A pain that was not localized, but pulsed in every nerve ending, as if Preston's blood had been replaced by battery acid. He did not know how long he had been on that couch. It could have been hours. It could have been years. The poison, deprived of new doses, now exacted its price in violent withdrawal. Preston's body, accustomed to award-winning vintage wines and Egyptian cotton sheets, now writhed on a rough polyester fabric soaked in sweat that smelled of ammonia. He woke up with a start, a scream caught in his dry throat, coming out only as a pathetic wheeze, his heartbeat erratically, skipping, then racing in a panicked rhythm. "Mom!" he groaned, his eyes rolling, seeing shadows on the peeling walls that looked like monsters. "Kendall, why are you laughing? Turn off the light." A cool hand touched his forehead. It was not Kendall's perfectly manicured hand. It was a rough hand with calluses on the palm, but the touch was of a kindness Preston had not felt since childhood. "Shh. Calm down. I am here. No one will hurt you." The voice was firm, an anchor in the storm. Preston opened his eyes. His vision was blurry, milky. The ceiling had no plaster or chandelier. There were exposed asbestos tiles and dark wooden beams. The ambient sound was a cacophony. A dog barking hoarsely right outside the window, a motorcycle revving, a couple fighting in the neighboring house, piercing through the thin walls. He tried to stand, driven by the instinct to flee, but the world spun violently. His stomach contracted in a brutal, empty, painful spasm. "Don't get up. You'll fall." The woman appeared in his field of vision. Hazel. She looked like she had aged 10 years in 3 days. There were deep purple circles under her eyes. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, stray strands stuck to her sweaty neck. She was wearing the same faded T-shirt. Preston tried to focus on her. Shame hit him before gratitude. He was dirty. He could smell his own body. He, Preston Vance, the man who never wore the same shirt twice, was rotting on a couch in the projects. "Water?" he asked, his tongue feeling like coarse sandpaper in his mouth. Hazel picked up a scratched plastic cup with a bendable straw and brought it to his mouth, supporting his head with her other hand. "Slowly, Mr. Vance. You've thrown up everything for the past 48 hours. Your stomach is raw." He drank with animalistic eagerness, the lukewarm water burning as it went down. He coughed, choking, and Hazel wiped his chin with the corner of the towel that was on her shoulder. The gesture was so natural, so maternal, that Preston felt like crying. "I need to—" He tried to move, a physiological urgency hitting him. "The bathroom." Hazel hesitated for a second. She knew what that meant. The proud man would have to be carried. "Come on, lean on me," she said without disgust, without judgment. She put his arm around her neck and pulled him up. Preston was heavy, but now he was thinner, dehydrated. He stood, his legs trembling like green saplings. He had to lean on her completely, his face buried in her shoulder, smelling sweat and coconut soap. The 5-meter walk to the bathroom was a calvary. Preston gasped. Hazel grunted with the effort, but did not let go of him. The bathroom was tiny. The shower was a PVC pipe sticking out of the wall. There was no stall, just a mouldy plastic curtain. "Can you stand on your own?" she asked, concerned. Preston leaned on the concrete sink. He looked at the stained mirror above the sink. The reflection startled him. Unshaven, sunken eyes, yellowish skin, a ghost. "I can," he lied, his voice choked. "Thank you, Hazel. I am sorry for this." She left and closed the door, giving him the last shred of dignity he had left. Preston turned on the cold shower faucet. The icy water hit his back, shocking his system, but washing away the physical grime. He cried there, mixing tears with the cold water. He cried for the betrayal, for the humiliation, for the fear of dying there on that red concrete floor. When he came out, wrapped in a thin towel, Hazel was waiting with clean clothes in her hand, a political campaign T-shirt that said, "Vote Farmer Joe," and loose grey sweatpants. "I washed yours," she said quickly, seeing his gaze. "They were very dirty. You had 104-degree fever. You were very delirious. You screamed horrible things." What did I say?" Preston asked, putting on the T-shirt that smelled of cheap fabric softener, but clean. "You called for your mother. You asked your father for forgiveness, and you swore you'd rip Mrs. Vance's heart out with your own hands," Hazel said, eyes downcast. "And you asked me not to let you die." Preston stopped. He looked at that small woman who had the strength of a giant. "And you didn't?" "No." She looked up, firm. "In my house, death doesn't enter uninvited. Now sit down. I made chicken soup. It's the only thing that will stay down in your stomach." The next day, physical recovery progressed, but psychological tension increased. Preston could already sit up and take a few steps without dizziness, but the confinement was driving him crazy. Hazel's shack was an island surrounded by dangers. It was late. The sun beat down hard on the asbestos roof, turning the house into an oven. Preston was sweating, impatient. Hazel was sewing some clothes near the window, always watching the street through the gap in the newspaper taped to the glass. Suddenly, knocks echoed at the gate, loud, persistent. "Hazel! Anyone home?" A woman's voice, shrill. Preston froze. He looked at Hazel with wide eyes. Hazel made a sign for absolute silence, her finger on her lips, her eyes wide with fear. "It's Mrs. Gable, the gossipy neighbor." Hazel whispered, barely moving her lips. "She's seen the car parked out front for days." "Hazel, open up, girl. I know you're in there. I heard a man's noise," the neighbor yelled, laughing maliciously. "Are you hiding a man, huh? You of all people, the saint?" Preston felt his heart pound in his throat. If that woman came in, if she saw his face... Hazel stood up slowly. She needed to throw them off. If she didn't answer, the neighbor might call someone or jump the low wall to see if something had happened. "Go to the bedroom, now, and don't make a sound," Hazel ordered in a whisper, pushing Preston into the house's only bedroom. Preston went in and leaned against the wall, holding his breath. Hazel went to the living room window without opening the door. "Hi, Mrs. Gable. I've got a killer migraine, girl," Hazel yelled, forcing a tired voice. "The car belongs to a cousin of mine from out of town who came for a hospital exam. It's broken down. He left it here to avoid paying for parking." "Cousin, huh?" The neighbor didn't seem convinced. "And where is he? Aren't you going to introduce him? People are saying you've been missing from work, Hazel. Is everything all right? You're not getting involved in anything shady, are you? The police were here yesterday asking about a robbery on the south side." Preston froze. The police were probing. Heaven forbid, Mrs. Gable. "It is just the flu and an annoying cousin," Hazel replied firmly. "When I feel better, I will stop by for coffee. Now let me sleep. My head is pounding." There was a tense silence. Preston could imagine the neighbor trying to peek through the cracks. "All right then. Feel better. But listen, keep an eye out for those cousins." The footsteps receded. Hazel leaned against the door, her legs trembling, and slid to the floor, breathing deeply as if she had run a marathon. Preston left the room. He saw the real fear on her face. It was no joke. They were hanging by a thread. "They are closing in," Preston said. "We cannot stay here forever." "Not another day," Hazel agreed, standing up. "Turn on the TV. Let us see how deep a hole they have dug for us." The tube TV crackled, the image greenish and distorted. It was the midday news, the show the whole town watched while eating lunch. A red banner bled across the screen. "The Tycoon's Mystery. Preston Vance missing for 5 days." The image cut to the front of the mansion. Preston felt a pang of nausea seeing his old home. Kendall was there, surrounded by microphones like a movie star on opening night. She wore huge designer sunglasses, a black scarf on her head. playing the perfect, desolate widow. "We are desperate," Kendall said, her voice choked, holding a tissue in her left hand, displaying the diamond wedding ring Preston had given her. Preston had been suffering. He wasn't himself anymore. Psychotic episodes, aggression. He thought he was being persecuted. He stopped taking his medication. Liar. "Odu," Preston growled, gripping the back of the old sofa until his knuckles turned white. "I was never aggressive with you. I gave you everything." The camera focused on Mitchell. He stood beside her, a protective hand on his sister-in-law's back, his expression grave, like someone carrying the weight of the world. "Unfortunately, we discovered a $15 million embezzlement in the company accounts today." Mitchell lied with sociopathic ease, looking directly at the camera. "We believe my brother had a mental breakdown, took the money and fled, but that's not the worst part." The studio host resumed with that voice of moral judgment. "The police are investigating the involvement of a household employee, Hazel Miller, 28 years old. Hazel's photo appeared on the screen. It was her ID badge photo, passport-sized, no smile, serious. Sources close to the family claimed that Hazel and Preston were having an extramarital affair. Police are working with the hypothesis that the cleaner, taking advantage of the businessman's mental fragility, drugged him to pull off $1 million scam." The bag of rice Hazel was holding fell from her hand, bursting open on the floor. The sound was sharp. "Mistress!" Her voice was a mere thread. "Con artist!" Hazel brought her hands to her mouth, sobs racking her, shaking her thin shoulders. "My mother back home will see this, Mr. Vance, my church pastor, my neighbors!" She was screaming now, the pain of the slander hurting more than a slap in the face. "I cleaned the floors they walked on. I ate the leftover food. I never took a single coin. And now I'm the villain. I'm the other woman." Preston saw that woman's destruction. He was used to corporate scandals, to lawyers, to crisis management. She wasn't. For her, honor was her only asset, and they had stripped that from her life for millions of people. He stood up. Dizziness came, but he ignored it. He crossed the room and turned off the TV with the button, killing the image of that circus. "Hazel," he said. She could not stop crying. She bent down to try and gather the rice from the floor in a pathetic automatic attempt to clean up the mess, as she had been trained to do. Preston bent down as well. He held her hands, stopping her from picking up the grains. "Stop. Leave the rice. Look at me." She lifted her wet face. "They destroyed my life. I have nowhere to go." "They did not destroy anything. They just bought a war they cannot win," Preston said. And for the first time in days, his voice had the commanding tone of a CEO, but mixed with a personal fury he had never shown in business. "I will clear your name, Hazel. I swear on my mother's soul. I will make Mitchell and Kendall apologize on their knees on national television." "How?" she sobbed. "You are a madman, and I am the scamming cleaner. Who will listen to us? No one needs to hear now. They just need to see." Preston helped her stand. He did not let go of her hands. His soft hands held her calloused ones. The contrast was stark, but the fit was perfect. "They messed with my money, and I took it. They messed with my health, but now they've messed with you, with the only person who had the courage to save me, and that is unforgivable." In that moment, in the cramped kitchen of the projects, the relationship changed. There was no longer a boss. There was a furious man protecting the woman who had become his world. Night fell, bringing some relief from the heat, but not from the tension. They ate the eggs with the leftover rice from the package for dinner. The wobbly plastic table looked like a war council table. "Tomorrow," Preston said, drawing lines on a napkin with a chewed pen. "They announced the gala for tomorrow night. It's Mitchell's final move. He needs the shareholders happy to sign the transfer on Monday." "Saturday night," Hazel murmured, looking at his drawing. The house will be full. Exactly. It's our only chance. We need to get in, grab the poison vial from the safe, and get out. Where's the safe? Hazel asked, leaning over the paper. Her scent of plain soap filled Preston's nostrils, and he found himself liking it. In the study, left bookshelf, third shelf. It's a fake book, The Divine Comedy. Preston gave a humorless laugh. The code is 1205. His mother's birthday, Hazel completed. How do you know? I clean the picture frames, Preston. She gave a sad smile. We know everything about our bosses' lives. You all know nothing about ours. Preston felt the weight of the truth. I cannot get in, he admitted, frustrated. The cameras have facial recognition at the main entrance and in the garage. My security guards know me by my walk. If I step on the sidewalk, the alarm goes off. Duh, but they do not have facial recognition for the service entrance. Hazel pointed to the back of the drawing. And the motion sensor in the pantry hallway has been out for 2 months. I told Mrs. Vance 3 times. She said she would have it fixed and never did. Preston looked at her, impressed. You know the security flaws better than I do. I know the house, Preston. You just lived in it, she said simply. I will go. No. Preston slammed his hand on the table. It is too dangerous. If Mitchell catches you in there, he will kill you and claim self-defense against an intruder. What if we don't go? She countered firmly. They win. You lose the company. I lose my freedom. I'd rather die trying to clear my name than live on the run like a rat. Preston looked at her. The timid cleaner had vanished. A lioness stood there. He felt overwhelmingly drawn to that strength. I'll be in the car, a block away, he conceded reluctantly, with the engine running. If you take longer than 15 minutes, I'll go in there and ram through that gate with the beat-up 05 Corolla. I don't care about the police. 15 minutes is a long time for someone who can clean an office in 10, she tried to joke, but her hand was trembling on the table. Preston covered her hand with his. Hazel, if this goes wrong, it won't, she squeezed his hand, because now we're not alone anymore. The next day dragged on. The preparation was tense, silent. As dusk fell, Hazel transformed. She took off her civilian clothes and put on her old light blue uniform, which had been stored at the bottom of her backpack. She pulled her hair back into a severe bun, tugging each strand. She removed her small earrings. She put on an old pair of reading glasses she used to slightly alter her face. When she turned to Preston, he felt a tightening in his chest. She had reverted to being the invisible employee. Her posture changed. Her shoulders slumped slightly, her head lowered. It was a perfect and painful disguise. It's incredible, Preston said, his voice hoarse. You change completely. That's how you like us, isn't it? Invisible, silent, she said without bitterness, merely stating a fact. No one will look at me twice. I'll go in with the catering or decoration crew. Just another cleaner. Preston walked over to her. They were very close in the small room. The air grew thin. You are not invisible to me, Hazel. Never again, he said intensely. You are the most important person in my life. Hazel held her breath. Her eyes shone behind the thick lenses. Take this. Preston took a cheap prepaid cell phone from his pocket, bought with the money from selling a gold chain Hazel owned, her only piece of jewelry. Keep it on silent mode, tucked into your bra. If you sense danger, press any button. I will be listening. He placed the cell phone in her hand, closing her fingers over the device. Promise you will come back. He pleaded, and there was real fear in the voice of the man who used to close million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. Promise you will not leave me alone. I will be back, she whispered. We have a party to ruin. She turned and walked out the door, disappearing into the night of the projects. Preston watched through the crack in the window until the blue silhouette disappeared around the corner. He grabbed his car keys, his heart beating like a war drum. He waited 2 minutes, timed on the mental clock that never failed. And then he went after her. He limped a little. He was wearing donated clothes. He had no money, no power, no name. But as he got into Hazel's beat-up '05 Corolla and turned the key, Preston Vance felt more dangerous than ever. He was not going to reclaim his company. He was going to protect his woman. And woe to anyone who stood in his way. The Vance estate gleamed atop the hill like a diamond crown set in the night's darkness. From afar, to those passing on the avenue below, it looked like a fairy tale scene. Golden lights bathed the royal palm trees, white-gloved valets rushed to open doors of imported cars, and the muffled sound of a string orchestra floated through the air. But for Hazel, crouched behind a thorny hibiscus hedge in the back of the neighbouring vacant lot, that was no castle. It was the wolf's den, and she was about to throw herself down its throat. She was gasping for breath, her chest rising and falling in a painful rhythm. She had walked the last 2 miles, climbing through the brush to avoid the main guardhouse cameras. Cold sweat trickled down her back, making the synthetic cleaning uniform itch her skin. Her bun was too tight, pulling her scalp, a constant ache that served to keep her alert. She peered through the leaves. She saw 2 armed guards passing near the pool area, laughing and lighting cigarettes. They were young, big men in ill-fitting black suits, mercenaries hired by Mitchell. "Lord, be my shadow and my shield," she whispered, her mouth dry, kissing the small metal cross she wore around her neck. She waited for the men to turn the corner of the house, disappearing from view. She had 30 seconds before they came back around. Hazel ran. It was not an elegant run. She ran crouched low, almost on all fours, stepping on the soft, damp grass to avoid making noise. Her cheap rubber shoes slipped on the dew. She ignored the kitchen door, where the movement of waiters and cooks was frantic, a ballet of silver trays and chef's shouts. She went to the dark side of the house, where the tree shadows were densest. There was the laundry room basement window. It was a low window, flush with the ground, covered by neglected vines and thick spiderwebs. Hazel knew the latch was broken. She herself had caught her finger there 3 months ago, her nail turning purple, and asked the caretaker to fix it. He laughed and said he would do it next week. He never did. Nobody notices a poor person's work. Nobody cares about a flaw in the service area, she thought, thanking the rich for their laziness and arrogance for the first time in her life. She pushed aside the dry leaves with trembling hands. A large spider scurried over her hand. Hazel bit her lip to keep from screaming, holding back tears of disgust and terror. She wiped her hand on the grass and pushed the casement window. The glass creaked. Hazel froze. The sound seemed like thunder in the silent garden. She looked around. Nobody appeared. The party music muffled the small noises. With the agility of someone who spent her days cleaning baseboards and squeezing behind furniture, she swung her legs through the narrow opening. She slipped inside, scratching her arm on the rusty iron frame. She fell onto the cold concrete floor of the basement, landing amidst dusty wine boxes and old Christmas decorations. The smell of the house instantly filled her nostrils. It was not the smell of home. It was the smell of artificial lavender, furniture polish, and controlled humidity. The smell of her job, the smell of her submission, and now the smell of her nightmare. She stood up, dusting off her knees. Her heart pounded in her throat, a frantic drum. She tiptoed up the service spiral staircase. Her cell phone vibrated in her bra against the sensitive skin of her breast. It was Preston, the sign of life. He was outside, biting his nails, ready to burst in if she screamed. Knowing he was there gave her a shot of courage. She could not answer, but she pressed the phone against her body as if squeezing his hand. As she opened the door at the top of the stairs, the sound of the house hit her like a physical wave. Muffled voices, laughter, silverware clinking on porcelain, the smell of shrimp and champagne. The party was being set up in full swing. Hazel entered the service hallway. She had to press herself against the wall when two waiters rushed past, carrying silver trays with canapés. She immediately lowered her head, tucking her chin to her chest, holding an old rag she had pulled from her pocket as if it were her magic shield of invisibility. "Move it, lady! We're late!" one of the waiters grumbled, almost bumping into her, the smell of hairspray and sweat coming from him. "Excuse me, sir. I'm sorry," she murmured in a hoarse voice, shrugging her shoulders. They passed. They didn't even look at her face. They didn't even see the color of her eyes. To them, she was furniture. She was part of the scenery, invisible, exactly as Preston had predicted. Hazel let out a breath. Her heart was pounding so hard that she thought the sound would echo in the empty hallway. "Invisible," she repeated to herself. "I am a ghost." She needed to reach the second floor. The back service staircase used to bring clean laundry to the rooms was clear. She climbed step by step, pausing at each creak of the old wood, her eyes wide in the gloom. The second floor was quieter, carpeted, muffled. It was the private area. The study was at the end of the hallway near the master suite. Hazel saw the solid oak door of the study ajar. A sliver of yellow light escaped from there, cutting across the dark carpet. Was someone inside? She stopped, leaning against the wall, sweating cold. The sweat ran down inside her clothes, icy. She heard footsteps inside, heavy footsteps, high heels clicking with authority. "I want these flowers changed now, Agnes. White roses are for funerals, you imbecile. I want red orchids in the foyer." It was Kendall's voice, shrill, cruel, without the false sweetness she used with Preston. "And have this carpet cleaned again? There is a stain here. If the governor sees this, you are out on the street." Hazel held her breath. Kendall was 5 yards away. "Yes, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am. I will take care of it right away." The voice of the housekeeper, Agnes. That bitter woman who always humiliated Hazel, calling her a day labourer and searching her bag on the way out. They left the study. Hazel shrank into a wall niche where a huge Chinese vase stood, praying for the shadows to swallow her. Kendall passed by, her black silk dress brushing against Hazel's leg. Her boss's expensive perfume was cloying. Kendall was looking at her cell phone, typing furiously, the screen light illuminating her tense face. Agnes followed behind, head down, jotting notes in a small pad. As soon as they turned towards the main staircase, heading down to the party, Hazel ran. She entered the study and slowly closed the door, holding the doorknob to prevent the lock from clicking. The study was plunged into gloom, lit only by a green desk lamp. It smelled of Cuban cigars and old leather. The smell of Mitchell. He had already marked his territory, smoking where Preston forbade it. The smell turned Hazel's empty stomach. She went straight to the bookshelf on the left, an entire wall of books nobody read. Her hands trembled so much that she knocked over a crystal paperweight. She threw herself to the floor to catch it before it hit. She held it millimeters from the carpet. She took a deep breath, trying to control the trembling in her legs. "Focus, Hazel. Focus." She stood up. "Third shelf. Third." She counted, her eyes scanning the gold-spined books. Civil law. Penal code, art history. She found it. The Divine Comedy. The book looked more worn than the others, its spine slightly misaligned. She pulled the spine. The book did not budge. It was stuck. No, no. Panic rose. Preston said it was here. She tried again. She pushed it in and twisted. Nothing. Then she realized it was not about pulling, it was about tilting. She tilted the book to the right. Click. The false spine rotated, revealing a digital numeric keypad embedded in the shelf's wood. 1, 2, 0. 5, she typed, her finger slipping with sweat. She missed the 0. She pressed 9. The keypad flashed red. Beep, 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 a low error sound, but it seemed like a siren to her. "Calm down, woman, calm down." She wiped her hand on her apron. She breathed. She pictured Preston's face. She typed slowly. 1, 2, 0, 5, beep, click. A secret compartment opened with a soft, hydraulic sigh. Hazel's heart stopped for a second. There it was, the small, amber glass vial, almost empty. The poison, liquid death. Beside it, a stack of papers. She picked up the first one with her fingertips. Interdiction report, Preston Vance. Diagnosis, irreversible paranoid schizophrenia. Signed by a doctor she had never seen in her life, and a power of attorney granting full company powers to Mitchell Vance. "I found it," she whispered, hot tears welling in her eyes. "I found it, Preston. They were going to bury you alive." She shoved the vial into the deep pocket of her apron and the folded papers inside her clothes against her stomach, feeling the paper scratch her skin. She was about to leave when she heard the doorknob turn. There was no warning. There were no footsteps in the carpeted, muffled hallway. The golden doorknob turned slowly. There was no time to run to the window. There was no curtain thick enough. Hazel threw herself to the floor. She crawled under the immense mahogany desk in the study, an old, heavy piece of furniture with a closed back. She curled into a fetal position, pulling her feet in, hugging her knees. She prayed the shadow of the presidential leather chair would cover her. The door opened. 2 pairs of shoes entered Hazel's limited field of vision. Men's patent leather shoes, gleaming and killer red stiletto heels. "Are you sure you locked the suite's closet?" Mitchell asked. His voice was right above Hazel's head, vibrating through the table's wood. "I did, Mitchell. Stop being paranoid. No one's coming up here." Kendall replied, throwing herself into one of the armchairs facing the table. Hazel saw her feet, swinging impatiently, crossing her legs. "The body hasn't appeared, Kendall," Mitchell said, pacing back and forth. The sound of his footsteps on the carpet was muffled, but oppressive. He stopped right in front of the table. Hazel saw the tip of his shoe inches from her nose. "It's been 6 days. If he had died in a ditch, someone would have found him. The smell, vultures. He is dead, Mitchell. Accept the victory." Kendall laughed, a dry sound, and Hazel heard the clinking of glass. Kendall was pouring herself a drink at the corner bar cart, ice clinking in the glass. "With the dose he took that day, he must have had a heart attack in the wilderness, passed out, and the animals ate him. Better this way. No body, no autopsy, no questions. In 6 months, we will declare him legally dead, and all the money will be ours." Hazel felt her stomach churn. The callousness, they spoke of Preston's death as if it were discarding trash. With her hands trembling violently, Hazel pulled her phone from her bra. The screen lit up with the brightness on the lowest setting, but in the darkness under the table, it seemed like a beacon. She covered the screen with her hand, desperate. She unlocked it. She tapped the voice recorder icon. RC. "What about the cleaner?" Mitchell asked, resting his hands on the tabletop, directly above where Hazel was. The table creaked under his weight. She could hear his heavy, anxious breathing. That penniless woman? That Hazel? Kendall scoffed, taking an audible sip. She must have fled to the boonies, to the hole she crawled out of, afraid of the police. We pinned the blame on her perfectly. We planted the doubt. Nobody will believe an illiterate trailer trash woman with a restraining order against the widow Vance crying on TV. Hazel felt a cold anger replace her fear. Blood rushed to her face. "Not illiterate. I finished high school, you witch. I read more than you do." The indignation made her stop trembling. Now she had a mission. "Tonight is our coronation," Mitchell said, his tone shifting to arrogance. He slammed his hand on the table. Hazel flinched. I am going to announce the merger with the Chinese. Preston never wanted to sell, that sentimental idiot. He used to say the company was family, Dad's legacy. I am going to sell everything, carve up the construction company, take my 40% and live in Monaco. No more working. And I'll get the house and the life insurance, Kendall toasted. A toast to Preston's end. May he burn in hell. They laughed. They laughed loudly. They laughed at the death of the man who supported them, who loved them. Let's go downstairs. The guests are arriving. The string quartet has already started, Kendall said, standing up. Wait, Mitchell said. Let me grab the perfume of success. I like to use it before I speak. Hazel froze. The blood drained from her face. He was heading for the bookshelf, for the safe. If he opened the safe and saw the poison was gone, he would know. He would lock down the house. He would hunt down anyone inside with weapons. Mitchell's footsteps moved away from the table, heading towards the bookshelf. Thump, thump, thump. Hazel closed her eyes, pressing the cell phone against her chest, waiting for the scream of fury, waiting for the end. Mitchell, Kendall called from the door, impatient, tapping her foot. The governor just arrived. I saw the official car through the window. You need to greet him. Leave your fetishes for sniffing money for later. Let's go. Mitchell stopped mid-stride. He sighed, frustrated. All right, the governor is a priority. He's going to sign the approval for the port construction. He turned around. The door slammed shut. The latch clicked. Hazel released the breath she had been holding for 2 minutes in a long, trembling exhale. She was dizzy from lack of oxygen. She saved the recording. She had everything. The confession of the murder, the plan for the sale, the disregard for human life. She crawled out from under the table, her numb legs tingling. She needed to get out of there now. Every second was a risk. Hazel slowly opened the study door, peeking out. The hallway was empty, but the music downstairs was louder, violins playing a triumphant waltz. The party had begun. She ran for the service stairs. She had to go down to the laundry room and exit through the basement window, but as she turned the corner of the service hallway near the freight elevator, she ran straight into a white wall. It was not a wall. It was the starched white and impeccable uniform of Agnes, the head housekeeper. The two stopped inches from each other. Time froze. Agnes widened her small, cruel eyes. She recognized Hazel instantly, even with the glasses, even with the disguise. Hatred gleamed in her eyes. "You!" Agnes screamed, her voice shrill with shock. "You thief! Murderer! What are you doing here?" Hazel did not think. She acted with the instinct of a cornered animal defending its young. "Shut up!" Hazel lunged forward. Agnes, larger and heavier, tried to grab Hazel's hair with her big hands. "Help! Security! The fugitive is here! Catch the thief!" Agnes shrieked, her voice echoing in the tiled hallway, trying to hold Hazel by the arms. Hazel felt Agnes's nails dig into her arm. The pain was sharp. She struggled. "Let go of me." Hazel lifted her foot and stomped on Agnes's instep with all the force of her hard-soled shoe. "Ouch!" Agnes howled in pain, letting go of one arm and hopping on one foot. Hazel seized the opportunity. She did not try to hit. She pushed. She used her body weight and shoved Agnes with her shoulder against the open door of the linen closet, a large, deep cabinet where piles of spare towels and sheets were kept. Agnes, off balance, stumbled backward, falling onto her back on a pile of soft comforters. "You filthy trailer trash! Mr. Mitchell will kill you! I am calling the police!" Agnes screamed, trying to get up amidst the comforters, looking like a flipped turtle. Hazel slammed the door in her face. She grabbed the key that was in the lock from the outside. She turned it. Click, click. 2 turns. Agnes's screams were muffled inside, muffled by the towels and thick wood. She pounded on the door. "Open up, you tramp! Help!" Hazel leaned her forehead against the door, breathing like a locomotive. She knew no one would hear from downstairs with the party music and the soundproofing of the service area. But it wouldn't last forever. Someone would come for towels or ice. Hazel looked to the side. There was a basket of clothes for donation disposal in the corner. On top of the pile, she saw a familiar grey fabric, Preston's suit. A charcoal grey Armani that he wore when he spilled tomato sauce on the lapel last month. Kendall had thrown it out because the stain won't come out and he doesn't wear mended clothes. Hazel knew it would come out. She had tried to save the suit, but Agnes had taken it from her. And right below, hanging on a crooked employee, lost and found hanger, was the black dress Hazel had forgotten at last year's employee Christmas party. A simple knit dress with a boat neck that she loved. Agnes had said she threw it in the trash. A lie. It was there, waiting to become a rag. "My dress," she whispered, pulling the garment angrily. She grabbed Preston's suit, pants and jacket, and the black dress. She rolled everything into a clumsy ball. She ran. She went down the spiral staircase, skipping 2 steps at a time, almost falling. She entered the dark basement. The window was still open. She threw the clothes outside onto the grass. She climbed onto the wine box and squeezed through the opening, scratching her back on the frame, tearing her cleaning uniform. She fell onto the wet grass of the garden, outside. Free. The night air had never been so sweet. She gathered the clothes from the floor and ran. She ran without looking back, disappearing into the darkness of the vacant lot, while the Strauss waltz played triumphantly in the mansion, unaware that the queen of the party had just lost her crown. Preston was pacing in circles next to Hazel's beat-up '05 Corolla, 2 blocks away, on a deserted, dimly lit street. He bit his nails until they bled. 17 minutes. She was 2 minutes late. His mind conjured horror scenarios. Hazel captured, Hazel injured, Hazel dead. His hand was already on the door handle to get in the car, start the engine, and storm the main gate. Discretion be damned. "Preston!" He turned, his heart leaping. Hazel was running down the dark sidewalk, holding a pile of fabric in her arms, her hair disheveled, her uniform torn at the shoulder, her chest rising and falling violently. Preston ran to her. He asked nothing. He hugged her so tightly that he lifted her feet off the ground. He buried his face in her neck, smelling fear, sweat, and that cheap perfume which was now the scent of salvation. "You are alive. My God, you are alive," he repeated, his voice trembling, kissing the top of her head. "I did it," she gasped, laughing and crying at the same time, the adrenaline pouring out of her pores. She pulled back a little, reached into her pocket, and pulled out the vial. She placed it in his hand. The glass was warm from her body, the poison, and the recording. "They confessed everything, Preston, everything. They said you died. They laughed at you." Preston looked at the vial, the proof of his innocence, the key to getting his life back. But when he looked at Hazel, he saw something infinitely more valuable. He saw loyalty personified in a woman. You are the bravest woman I have ever known." "We have to run," she said, pushing the clothes against his chest. "Agnes saw me. I locked her in the coat check, but she will scream until someone hears. They will know we were here. We have minutes before the alarm goes off." "Agnes?" Preston laughed, a nervous, disbelieving laugh. "You locked the housekeeper in the coat check. It was her or me." Hazel opened the back door of the car. "I brought this. It was in the trash. It's yours, that grey suit, and my black dress. Are we going to change here? On the street? Do you want to go into your party in a sweatshirt and flip-flops?" she asked, already unzipping her cleaning uniform. They got into the cramped car. The interior light was out, which offered precarious privacy. It was a strange, intimate, and hurried scene. Preston took off his beggar's clothes in the front seat, struggling with the steering wheel's space. Hazel changed in the back seat. There was no sexual malice, only urgency for survival. But the sound of fabric sliding, the gasping breaths of the two in the confined space. There was an electricity in the air. Preston saw, in the rearview mirror, Hazel's silhouette taking off the uniform that defined her as a servant. She was being reborn. Preston put on the pants. They were loose at the waist. He had lost 11 pounds in a week of hell, but the belt held them up. He put on the white shirt, which was with them, and the jacket. The stain on the lapel was imperceptible in the dark. He adjusted his collar without a tie, leaving the top button open. He looked like an avenger, not a stuffy executive. Hazel put on the black dress. It was simple, tight-knit, boat neck, knee-length. She let her hair down. Her brown strands fell in waves over her shoulders, freed from the servant's bun she had worn for years. She took off her thick-rimmed glasses. She ran her hand over her face to wipe away the sweat and grime. She bit her lips to add colour. She got out of the car. Preston also left. They looked at each other under the weak yellow street lamp. Preston stopped. He had never seen Hazel with her hair down and in a dress. Without her uniform, without her hunched posture. She was beautiful. Not Kendall's plastic, bought beauty. A real raw beauty of a woman who carries the world on her shoulders and doesn't break. "You are," he began, but the words failed him. His throat closed up. Hazel approached. She adjusted the lapel of his jacket, smoothing the fabric gently. "Sir, you look like you own all of this again," she said softly, looking into his eyes. "Ready to take what's yours?" Preston held her hand. He intertwined their fingers firmly. "What's ours, Hazel? I'm not going in there without you. Tonight you're not the cleaner. You're my guest of honor, my partner, and their worst nightmare." He pulled her close, his hand on the back of her neck, and kissed her forehead lingeringly. A kiss of promise. "Let's go. The show is about to begin." They got into the car. Preston peeled out, tires squealing on the asphalt. Not towards escape, away from the city, but towards the main entrance of the estate. The time for silent justice was over. Now it would be loud and brutal. The crystal ballroom of the Vance estate shone with an intensity that hurt the eyes. Check crystal chandeliers, each costing the price of a modest home, hung from the ceiling like diamond cascades, refracting light into artificial rainbows over the heads of the city's elite. 500 people jostled in the air-conditioned space. The scent was a dense, cloying mixture of imported perfumes, Chanel, Dior, Hermès, mingled with the aroma of white lilies, which Kendall insisted on placing, despite them looking like funeral flowers, and the metallic scent of pure ambition. White-gloved waiters glided through the crowd like ghosts, serving Veuve Clicquot champagne in baccarat crystal flutes. No one looked them in the eye. They were floating trays, not people. At the center of the elevated stage, lit by a solitary spotlight that cut through the chic gloom of the ballroom, stood Mitchell Vance. He wore a black Italian tuxedo, impeccably tailored, custom-made to disguise the protruding belly of someone who lived off business dinners and had never lifted a brick in their life. His hair was slicked back with too much gel, shining like oil. He held the microphone with both hands, head bowed, in a rehearsed pose of deep mourning and Christian resignation. Beside him, seated in a red velvet chair that resembled a throne, was Kendall, the Black Widow. She was stunning and terrifying. She wore a black, pure silk gown, but the neckline was too deep for mourning, and the slit in the skirt rose to her thigh. Around her neck, the Ice Tears diamond necklace, a 10-year anniversary gift from Preston, sparkled. She dabbed the corner of her dry eye with a French lace handkerchief, performing for the cameras, broadcasting the event on the backyard garden screens. "Ladies and gentlemen, friends, partners," Mitchell began, his voice trembling with manufactured emotion projected through the high-definition Bose speakers. "It is with a shattered, bleeding heart that I stand before you today, my brother, my guide, my hero, Preston. There was a murmur of "poor guy" and "what a tragedy" from the audience. Some major shareholders checked stock market quotes on their phones, concerned only with the impact on shares. Mitchell took a dramatic pause, looking at the ceiling painted with Renaissance angels, as if seeking divine inspiration, or checking if the ceiling was his own now. Preston left us too soon. His mind, brilliant visionary, was betrayed by a silent and cruel illness. Mitchell continued, gaining confidence, the lie flowing like wine. Paranoid schizophrenia does not choose social class. He fought. We fought with him. But the darkness won. Kendall let out a loud, perfectly timed sob. Mitchell placed his hand on her shoulder. But the show must go on. Vance Construction is greater than one man. It is a legacy. Therefore, with the blessing of my beloved sister-in-law Kendall, and with the support of the board, I assume the interim presidency today to ensure that my brother's dream does not turn to dust. Polite applause began at the front, led by the ever-present sycophants, and spread through the ballroom. The governor, present in the front row, nodded gravely. Money abhors a power vacuum. The king is dead. Long live the new king. Kendall stood, walking to the microphone like a model on a runway. She took Mitchell's hand. "Mitchell has been my rock," she said, her voice soft, husky, seductive. "Preston would be proud to see his brother taking the throne, and I only ask for privacy to grieve, and of course justice." Her voice hardened, her eyes swept the room. "Because we know that fugitive cleaner, that woman we opened our home to, is to blame. She took advantage of his illness. She led him to his death." "Murderer!" someone shouted from the back of the ballroom, inflamed. The lie had taken hold. Class hatred was the perfect fuel. Mitchell smiled, a restrained smile of absolute victory. He looked to the back of the ballroom. He had succeeded. The company was his. The fortune was his. His brother's wife was his. And his brother was dead, buried in some hole, worm food and forgotten. "Let's toast." Mitchell raised his glass. "To Preston, wherever he may be, and to the future of Vance." 500 glasses rose, clinking. The sound of crystal clinking seemed like the sound of coins falling. It was at that exact moment, at the peak of the toast, that the sound of a digital thunder tore through the air. It was not thunder from the sky. It came from the 5,000-watt speakers, a sharp, deafening feedback noise that made everyone cover their ears and spill their drinks. Eek! The sound cut the toast like a knife. Mitchell recoiled, startled, champagne spilling onto his hand. "What is that? Technician, cut it!" He yelled at the sound booth located on the mezzanine behind dark glass. "Professionalism, please." But the sound technician was no longer in charge. In the glass booth, the technician, a young man named Caleb, was cowering in the corner, pale, with his hands raised. In front of the control board stood a tall man. His grey suit was a little loose on his thin shoulders, but his posture was that of a general. His hair was dishevelled, his beard unshaven, and his eyes burned with a cold fire. Preston Vance. He had entered through the back of the booth. The technician tried to stop him, but Preston merely looked at him and said, "Sit down and learn." His natural authority was stronger than any badge. Preston connected Hazel's cheap cell phone with its cracked screen to the auxiliary cable of the main soundboard. The P2 cable clicked into place with a satisfying sound. He looked down at the stage, through the glass. He saw Mitchell's sweaty face. He saw Kendall's made-up face. He tasted the metallic tang of revenge in his mouth, mixed with the bile of the past. "Showtime," Preston whispered. He slid his finger on the master fader, raising the volume to maximum, and pressed play. First, he cut the power. Clack! The ballroom plunged into complete darkness. The chandeliers went out. The darkness swallowed the jewels, the dresses, the arrogance. Startled screams from the audience. Did the power go out? Is it an attack? Then, in the absolute darkness, the voice emerged, clear, crystalline, gigantic, surrounding them from all sides, coming from all the speakers in the garden and the ballroom. With the dose he took that day, he must have had a heart attack in the middle of nowhere, passed out, and the animals ate him. Better that way. No body, no autopsy. It was Kendall's voice, unmistakable. The drawn-out timbre, the casual coldness. On the dark stage, Kendall froze. The blood drained from her face. The glass slipped from her numb fingers and shattered on the floor, but no one heard the glass break because of the audio volume. "And the cleaner?" Mitchell's voice asked on the audio, echoing like thunder. "That starving woman? We pinned the blame on her perfectly. No one will believe an illiterate woman with a restraining order against Mrs. Vance crying on TV." The ballroom fell into a deadly silence. No one breathed. The city's elite, who minutes before had applauded the widow, now listened to the raw confession. The governor removed his hand from his aide's shoulder. The investors took a step back. "I'll sell everything, carve up the construction company, and I'll keep the house and the life insurance. A toast to Preston's end. May he burn in hell." Laughter. Their laughter on the recording echoed through the dark ballroom, diabolical, mocking everyone present. The recording ended with a static hiss. "Turn on the light! Turn on that damn light!" Mitchell screamed in the dark, his voice hysterical, high-pitched, losing its alpha male tone. "It's a setup. It's AI. It's a lie. Technician, I'll kill you." A single spotlight came on, but not on the stage. A strong, surgical beam of white light cut the ballroom in half and illuminated the double oak doors of the main entrance, which stood open to the night. There he was, Preston Vance, the dead man, the madman. He did not look like the polished businessman from magazine covers. He looked like a shipwreck survivor, thin, gaunt, serious. But there was a dignity about him that no Italian suit could buy, and beside him, hand in hand, was Hazel, no uniform, no bun. Hair loose, falling over her shoulders, a simple black dress, head held high. She was not looking at the floor, as she had for years in that house. She was looking directly at the stage. "It's a ghost," a lady whispered in the front row, making the sign of the cross. Preston took the first step. The crowd parted. It was instinctive. Like the Red Sea parting, the guests recoiled, opening a wide corridor in the middle of the ballroom. No one dared to touch him. The air around Preston vibrated with a dangerous energy. They walked, thump, thump, thump. The sound of shoes on the marble set the rhythm of the judgment. Mitchell, on the stage, clutched the podium to keep from falling. His legs visibly trembled. "Security!" Mitchell shouted, his voice cracking, sweat dripping down his forehead. "Briggs! Guards! Arrest this man! He's insane! He escaped from the asylum! He's dangerous! Shoot if you have to!" 2 guards ran towards Preston down the hallway. They were recently hired brutes who knew no loyalty. Preston didn't even stop walking. He simply raised his free hand. The other firmly held Hazel's hand and pointed a finger at the head of security, an old house employee with grey hair who stood to the side. "Briggs," Preston said. His voice didn't need a microphone. It carried the weight of 10 years of leadership. "If your men take one more step, you lose your retirement, your honor, and your freedom. Get out of my way." Briggs stopped. He looked at Mitchell, fuming on the stage. He looked at Preston, the man who paid for his daughter's surgery last year without deducting it from his salary. Briggs made a sharp hand signal. The security guards immediately stopped and lowered their stun guns. Briggs bowed his head in reverence and retreated into the shadows. "Traitors! I pay you!" Mitchell yelled, hitting the microphone. "I'll double your salary! Kill him!" Preston and Hazel reached the foot of the stage. Preston slowly climbed the steps. Hazel followed right behind, shoulder to shoulder. She was not a follower. She was a partner. Kendall, seeing that security would not act, tried to run. She grabbed her clutch bag and tried to exit via the side stage stairs, tripping on her dress. "Where are you going, my love?" Preston asked, ironically calm, his voice icy. "Wasn't the party for me? Didn't you want to toast?" Hazel stepped forward. With a swift movement, she blocked Kendall's path on the side stairs, the cleaner and the boss's wife, face to face. Kendall was taller in her heels, but Hazel seemed morally gigantic. "Get out of my way, you trash!" Kendall hissed, trying to push Hazel with her shoulder. "You don't know who you're messing with." Hazel grabbed Kendall's wrist in the air, forcefully, with the strength of someone who has wrung mops and carried heavy buckets for 10 years. Hazel's fingers closed like a steel vice. "You're not going anywhere, Mrs. Vance," Hazel said quietly, looking into her eyes for the first time without lowering her head. "The cleaning isn't over yet. The main trash still needs to be taken out." Kendall screamed in pain and pulled her arm free, backing away, cornered, returning to the center of the stage. Preston reached the microphone Mitchell had abandoned. Mitchell backed away until his back hit the decorated wall at the back of the stage. There was nowhere to run. Preston looked at the audience. He saw the shocked faces, the cell phones raised, recording everything. The live broadcast must have been breaking world records. "Sorry for the delay," Preston said dryly. "I had a health issue, a severe intoxication caused by an excess of trust in my family." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the amber glass vial. He held it up to the spotlight. The yellowish liquid gleamed. Arsenic and digitoxin. He announced the chemical names as if delivering a sentence, a slow, painful, and undetectable combination in common blood tests. Lovingly prescribed by my wife in my morning juice and prepared by my brother. The intention was to simulate a heart attack. "That's a lie, he's hallucinating," Kendall screamed, trying to appeal to the audience, tears now smudging her makeup. "He's schizophrenic. Look at him, he's thin, dirty. He kidnapped this woman, he forced her to lie." Preston ignored her screams as if they were a radio playing in the background. He pulled the crumpled papers from the inside pocket of his jacket. "Here is the real medical report, done this morning at University Hospital with federal police witnesses. My blood is clean of psychiatric drugs, but full of poison. And here," he shook the other papers, "the power of attorney that Hazel stole. The fake power of attorney dated for tomorrow that my brother was going to use to sell the company my father built brick by brick." The audience started booing. The murmur turned into a roar of indignation. The mask had fallen and shattered into 1,000 pieces. Mitchell, seeing that the tables had turned, that the money had vanished, lost control. The cornered animal attacked. "You ruined everything!" Mitchell yelled, his eyes bloodshot with hatred, a vein throbbing in his neck. "You always had everything, the money, the prestige, the talent. I was always the shadow. Gustavo's brother, you deserved to die. I should have killed you with my own hands." The explicit confession, live, in front of 500 witnesses and thousands online. Mitchell looked to the side. He saw Hazel standing near Kendall. He saw that Preston was 2 yards from her. The weak link. The reason everything went wrong. "It's your fault," Mitchell roared, drool dripping. "You damn meddler. If it weren't for you, he'd be dead." He ran toward Hazel, blinded by hatred, his hand clenched to punch her in the face. He wanted to destroy what Preston loved most. The audience screamed. Hazel flinched, protecting her face with her arms. But the blow never landed. Preston was faster than lightning. The fury that had been contained, cold and calculated, exploded in a fraction of a second. He intercepted Mitchell halfway. With a fluid movement, regaining the strength he thought he had lost, Preston spun his body and delivered a right hook. A clean, technical, brutal cross. Preston's fist met Mitchell's jaw with the precision of a hammer. Crack. The sound of bone cracking was heard even in the back row, louder than any music. Mitchell lifted off the ground. His body spun in the air before falling heavily like a rotten sack of cement, unconscious in the center of the stage. Blood trickled from his split lip. Broken teeth flew onto the red carpet. Preston stood over him, breathing deeply, his clenched fist aching, his knuckles scraped, but his soul light. He did not look at his fallen brother. He looked at Hazel. "Nobody touches her," Preston growled, his voice animalistic. Kendall, seeing her lover and accomplice broken on the floor, started to cry. This time for real, from pure terror. She knelt, joining her hands in supplication, crawling to Preston's feet. "Preston, forgive me. It was him. He forced me." She sobbed, clutching his pant leg. "Mitchell threatened me. I didn't want to. I love you. I'm your wife. We were going to have children." Preston looked down. He looked at the woman with whom he had shared his bed for a decade, the woman he thought would be the mother of his children, and he felt nothing, neither hatred nor love nor pity, just an immense void, indifference. He pulled his leg away, freeing himself from her grasp with disgust. "Save your tears for the jury, Kendall," he said coldly. "You'll need a better performance than that to avoid 30 years. Sirens wailed outside. Flashing blue and red lights flooded the ballroom through the glass windows, painting the walls with emergency colors. It was not Sheriff Mercer's corrupt local police. It was black federal cruisers and the press in full force. Uniformed agents entered the hall, weapons drawn. "Hands on your heads, everyone!" the commander yelled. Mitchell, who was starting to wake up, groaning and spitting blood, was roughly handcuffed on the floor. Kendall was lifted by her arms and handcuffed, screaming that her lawyers would sue everyone, that she was a Vance. At that moment, the side door burst open. 2 officers were bringing someone in. It was Agnes, the housekeeper. She was disheveled, red-faced from screaming so much, still wrapped in a comforter she had used to try and cover herself after hours of being locked up. "I'll tell you everything," Agnes screamed at the police, trying to make a deal. "It was Mrs. Vance. She told me to leave the window open. I just obeyed. I'm innocent." The final betrayal, the rats devouring each other. Preston watched everything motionless. As they were dragged off the stage, to the boos and merciless camera flashes, Kendall looked back, one last time. Mascara ran down her face, turning it into a mask of horror. She saw Preston holding Hazel's hand. "You traded a lady for a maid," she spat her final venom, shouting for the entire ballroom to hear. "You will be the laughing stock of society. You will be trash just like her." Preston grabbed the microphone one last time. A heavy silence fell. Preston looked at the faces in the audience, the friends who believed he was crazy, the partners who had toasted with Mitchell minutes ago, the society Kendall valued so much. He looked at Hazel. She was trembling slightly now that the adrenaline was subsiding. She squeezed his hand tightly, her eyes downcast, ashamed by everyone's stares. "Lady." Preston repeated Kendall's word into the microphone, his voice echoing. "My ex-wife just said I traded a lady for a maid." He turned to the audience. "You look and you see a cleaner here, someone who cleans up your mess. Someone you don't even look in the face when they serve coffee. Someone you think is invisible." Preston's voice choked up, full of suppressed emotion. "But I see the only person in this room who has honor. The only person who risked her life, her freedom, and her own name to save a man who didn't deserve it, a man who had never even asked her last name." Hazel blushed violently, tears streaming down, but Preston gently lifted her chin with his fingertips. "Money did not buy loyalty. Blood did not guarantee love," he continued, looking into her eyes. "I had to lose everything, sleep on a broken spring couch in the projects, and eat rice and eggs to discover what true wealth is. Wealth is not in this crystal chandelier. It is in the hand that holds you when you fall into the abyss." He knelt. There, in the middle of the stage, in front of the TV cameras, in front of the elite who despised people like Hazel. The audience let out a collective, shocked "oh." The great Preston Vance, on his knees for the cleaner. "Hazel Miller," Preston said, ignoring the world, focused only on her. "I no longer have the arrogance I once did. I am a broken man trying to put the pieces back together. But I do not want to put any piece back together if you are not holding the glue. I want to learn to be the man you saw in me, even when I was not." Hazel was openly weeping now, her hands on her face, her body trembling with emotion. "Will you have dinner with me?" he asked, smiling, a boyish, open smile he hadn't shown in years. "Not here. Not with these fake people. Will you grab some greasy spoon food on the corner with me? As equals. No boss and employee. Just Preston and Hazel." Hazel laughed through her tears. A laugh of relief, of love, of victory. She bent down and hugged him, right there on the stage floor, burying her face in his neck. "I accept, you silly man. Of course I accept," she whispered in his ear. "But I'm paying for mine." Preston laughed loudly. He stood up, pulling her with him into a tight embrace. He didn't even look at the shareholders trying to approach to brown nose and apologize. He dropped the microphone on the floor. Thud. The dull thud of the impact was the final period on his old life. "Let's go," he said. They stepped down from the stage. The crowd parted again, but this time it wasn't out of fear, it was out of respect and shame. They walked out through the front door. The night air was cool, clean. The patrol cars took Kendall and Mitchell away, the sirens wailing in the distance like wounded beasts. Preston and Hazel walked to Hazel's beat-up '05 Corolla, parked on the sidewalk, among the guests' Ferraris, Porsches, and Mercedes. The contrast was stark and perfect. Preston opened the passenger door for her as if it were a royal carriage. He walked around and got into the driver's side. He took off his fancy jacket and tossed it onto the back seat. He rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt. "Where to, boss lady?" he asked, starting the sputtering Fiat engine. Hazel smiled, taking off her high heels and resting her bare feet on the dashboard, relaxed and happy for the first time in years. She looked at Preston with adoration. Home. Preston. To our home. Hazel's beat-up '05 Corolla pulled away, emitting a little smoke, descending the hill from the Vance estate, leaving behind the castle of lies. They drove down towards the lights of the real city, where life truly happened, where love cost nothing but was worth everything. Did you like this story of justice and love? Would you forgive Kendall if she begged for forgiveness on her knees? And what did you think of Preston's attitude in the end? Tell me in the comments below. I read them all. Until the next story.